What would you do if, mid-flight on your own private jet, the flight attendant suddenly slapped you? That's not a question anyone expected to ask that day. Not the executives on board, not the flight crew, and certainly not Emily Carter. Picture this: stepping into your personal aircraft, your initials stitched into every leather headrest, your company's logo etched into the stemware, and yet somehow being treated like you were just another face in the crowd. That was how the day began. A day that would unravel everything. Emily Carter wasn't just another wealthy passenger with a luxury lifestyle. She was the architect of her own empire, starting from a modest storefront in Columbus, Ohio, then moving into regional malls, high-end retail spaces, and eventually transforming her brand into a household name. Her face wasn't just on the brochures, it was the brand. Investors trusted her. Employees admired her. She was the kind of leader who earned her power the hard way. But that morning, taking off from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, all Emily wanted was a quiet, uneventful flight to Dallas. "Morning, Emily," said Nathan Ellis, her CFO, nervously adjusting his tie, a tick she had seen more often lately. "We'll have those figures finalized by the time we touch down." Emily gave him a knowing smile. "Good. Just make sure the math works this time." Her tone was easy, even playful, but her words carried weight. She had spotted errors creeping in lately, sloppy ones. As the rest of the executive team filed aboard, their casual conversations filled the cabin, talk of deals, deadlines, dropped balls, and who deserved credit for what. It was the usual pre-meeting murmur. But Emily, sharp as ever, picked up on the undercurrents, the quiet rivalry, the veiled jabs, the restless ambition humming beneath the surface. And then one voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Sir, that bag needs to be placed in the overhead. It can't remain in the aisle," said Megan Lawson, the lead flight attendant. Her voice was calm, but edged with a firmness that Emily rarely heard from staff on her jet. Megan was known in the private aviation world, not for charm, but for precision. Efficient, disciplined, and if the gossip was true, sometimes a little too blunt. The sir she addressed was Daniel Brooks, Emily's head of marketing. He let out a dismissive laugh, waving her off. "Relax. It's fine. I'll move it if it's an issue later." Megan didn't flinch. "It's an issue now." With an annoyed sigh, Daniel rolled his eyes and shoved the bag into the overhead bin, muttering under his breath. Emily watched the interaction, saying nothing. Not yet. She simply filed it away, the way she always did, with quiet precision. Once the aircraft leveled off, high above the clouds, the mood inside the cabin was anything but peaceful. Champagne glasses clinked. Laptops opened. Low conversations buzzed across leather seats. Megan moved down the aisle with mechanical grace, but her eyes lingered a bit too long on Emily's team, almost like she was evaluating them, weighing their worth. Emily caught that look. She caught everything. Gazing out the oval window, she spoke without turning her head. "Nathan," she said, "why are our West Coast numbers lagging again?" Nathan squirmed, sweat already beginning to form at his collar. We've had some delays with our suppliers." Emily cut in. "I didn't ask for an excuse. I asked for an answer." Her voice was low but frosted with finality. The cabin fell silent. Megan's glance flicked toward Emily. Their eyes met for the first time that morning. And in that brief moment, Emily saw something unexpected, something more than polite service. There was a hard edge in Megan's gaze, a flicker of disdain. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The jet kept cruising, but something had already begun to fracture. Nobody noticed it just yet, but the first break was there, and it was only going to widen. It started with a word, not a loud one, not even a cruel one, just sharp, too sharp. "Enough," Emily said, when Daniel tried to talk over Nathan. Her voice stayed cool, but it sliced through the chatter like a scalpel. Heads turned. Daniel leaned back in his seat, smirking like a child caught misbehaving, but still too proud to apologize. "Sorry, boss," he said. "Just trying to keep things moving by, helping your guy out." Emily's gaze stayed fixed. That's not how we operate. Silence again. Outside, the engines roared steadily, but inside the aircraft, the air felt heavier. Daniel coughed, shifted in his seat, then mumbled, "Noted." Megan, standing nearby with a tray of drinks, gave a subtle nod. It wasn't a smile, more like an acknowledgement. Emily clocked it. There was approval in that look, but also something more. A flicker of judgment, like Megan was silently assessing everyone on board, including Emily. "Miss Carter," Megan said a few minutes later, stepping closer with the same tray. "Would you like your meal now, or would you prefer to eat after reviewing your reports?" Emily looked up, curious now at the sudden warmth in Megan's tone. "After," she said, studying her. "Thank you." As Megan Lawson turned to step away, Emily Carter caught a detail most wouldn't have noticed, the way the flight attendant's eyes narrowed just slightly as she glanced at Nathan's laptop screen. It was subtle, quick, but not accidental. Emily clocked it immediately. Once Megan had moved out of earshot, Nathan leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "She's intense." Emily raised an eyebrow. "She's doing her job." Nathan hesitated, then added, "Maybe, but it kind of feels like she's watching us." Emily gave him a long, cool look. "Maybe she sees more than you realize." The conversation drifted back toward financials and timelines, but Megan's presence lingered like a storm cloud just outside the window. Every time she passed through the cabin, something shifted. Posture straightened. Eyes darted away. She didn't walk the aisle like a server. She moved like she owned the space. Suddenly, Emily interrupted the flow of chatter. "Daniel," she said, voice cutting through the room like a wire. "Walk me through the Dallas rollout. And do it straight, no excuses." Daniel jumped in quickly, launching into his pitch with polished confidence. Too polished. Too quick. Emily listened, her fingers resting lightly against her chin, eyes steady and unblinking. Halfway through, she lifted her hand. "Stop." Daniel blinked. "What?" "You just contradicted yourself," she said, voice steady. "First, you claimed the campaign budget was fully allocated. Then you admitted half the vendors aren't even locked in yet. So which is it?" Daniel's face went pale. It's in progress." "Don't lie to me." Emily snapped, her voice now sharp and heavy with authority. "Not on my jet. Not ever." The air inside the cabin turned suffocating. Even Megan, quietly clearing glasses near the rear, paused mid-step. The silence wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Daniel looked down, jaw clenched, saying nothing. Then Megan stepped forward, breaking the tension with a tone that was somehow both polite and needling. "Would you like a refill, Mr. Brooks?" Daniel shot her a glare. "I'm fine." Emily's eyes flicked between them. Something in their energy was off. Too tense. Too personal. An invisible line had been drawn somewhere, and Emily could feel it, even if she couldn't quite trace it yet. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. Outside, the jet sliced cleanly through the sky. Inside, things were unraveling. The chatter turned to whispers. Executives exchanged uneasy glances, trying to pretend they weren't watching the storm slowly build. And Megan? She moved among them like a shadow, always present, always calculating. Emily leaned back in her seat and let her eyes close, just for a moment. She was exhausted, tired of excuses, tired of pushing a team that seemed more interested in office politics than actual performance. But another thought pressed harder into her mind now, Megan's gaze. It wasn't the look of an employee serving a boss. It was something else entirely. A quiet challenge. A confrontation waiting to happen. And the confrontation didn't wait long. It began with something simple. Something almost routine. "Daniel, please lower your voice," Megan said calmly as she passed, a tray balanced easily in one hand. "Others are trying to focus." Daniel chuckled dismissively. "Others? You mean Emily? She can handle it." He smirked at Emily, like they were sharing some private joke. Emily's expression sharpened. "Daniel, what?" "I was just..." "Enough," Emily said, this time with an edge that cut like glass. "If you can't manage yourself on this plane, then maybe you don't belong on this team. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. No one even breathed too loudly. Daniel's smirk collapsed into a tight-lipped stare, his ego bruised in real time. But then, without warning, Megan stepped forward. Her posture was flawless. Her chin lifted. Her eyes locked squarely onto Emily. And then, it happened. A slap. Clean. Loud. Shocking. Megan's palm struck Emily's cheek with a crack that echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. For a beat, time didn't move. The tray in Megan's other hand dipped slightly, glassware clinking, but somehow nothing spilled. Every executive froze, mouths open, eyes wide. Emily's head tilted from the blow, but she didn't cry out. She didn't flinch. She turned calmly back to Megan, her face unreadable, a slow calm descending over her features like a veil. "Did you just?" Nathan's voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. "Did you just slap her?" Daniel jolted upright, his chair squeaking under him. "What the hell? Are you out of your mind?" Megan's breathing was fast now, her chest rising and falling, but her eyes stayed locked, her stance unwavering. "Someone had to say it," she muttered. "Someone had to call this circus what it is." The executive stared, stunned into silence. It was as if Megan had just detonated a bomb. "You slapped your boss," Nathan whispered, his voice shaking. "On her own jet." Megan turned her gaze to him, then back to Emily. "I didn't slap my boss," she said clearly. "I slapped a woman who surrounded herself with people who don't respect her, who think they can manipulate her, lie to her face, and laugh about it afterward." Her words fell like weights, thick and dangerous. Emily said nothing. Her cheek still carried the sting of Megan's palm, a red mark blooming across her skin, but her expression didn't crack. She stayed composed, controlled, and suddenly, everyone else in that cabin realized something. This wasn't over. Emily Carter turned her gaze from Megan Lawson and slowly swept it across her team: Nathan, Daniel, the others. Each one seemed to shrink under the pressure of her silence, their confidence evaporating under her unblinking stare. "Emily," Daniel blurted out, scrambling to seize the moment. "You're not seriously going to let this go, are you? She assaulted you. She needs to be kicked off this plane the second we touch down." Nathan jumped in quickly, trying to stabilize the unraveling scene. "This is a criminal offense, Emily. We can't just—" "Quiet," Emily said flatly. The word landed like a guillotine. The entire cabin went silent. Megan's breathing began to slow, though her hands still trembled slightly at her sides. She hadn't intended for things to unfold like this, not exactly. But there was no undoing it now. Stillness blanketed the cabin. The only sound came from the low drone of the engines outside and the quiet clinking of ice in an untouched glass. 10 seconds. 20. 30. No one spoke. The executives sat frozen, all of them glancing nervously at Emily, expecting an eruption, a shouted order, a demand to have Megan restrained, something. But Emily didn't move. She just sat there, statuesque, her gaze locked on Megan. Then, slowly, she leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees. Her voice came low, each word deliberate. "Do you know what you've just done?" Megan's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. She gave the faintest nod, just once. Emily leaned back again, her breath slow and steady. She didn't touch the red mark on her cheek. She didn't wince. If anything, she looked more composed than ever, like a queen who had just been challenged in her own court and was now deciding what to do about it. Meanwhile, the executives were in full-blown internal crisis. Whispers rippled across the seats like electricity. "She can't let that go. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. If this blows up, we're all going down with her." But Emily wasn't listening. She hadn't even looked at them. Her focus was still pinned on Megan. And then, Emily smiled. Barely. Just the corner of her mouth. And suddenly, the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop by 10 degrees. No one knew what the smile meant, but it terrified them more than if she'd started shouting. Because Emily's silence wasn't weakness. It was calculated, tactical. While everyone else was spiraling in fear, she was already 4 steps ahead. The sting of Megan's slap still echoed in the space. Quiet now, but unforgettable. The executives squirmed in their seats, unable to find comfort. Emily remained perfectly still, her fingertips resting lightly on the armrest, expression unreadable. Nathan cleared his throat, carefully breaking the silence. Emily, we should. She lifted one hand slightly, palm facing outward. He stopped mid-sentence. The jet felt smaller by the second. Claustrophobic. The kind of silence that made your heartbeat feel too loud. At the front of the cabin, Megan stood still, her back straight, but her eyes now fixed on the floor. The fire from earlier had faded into tension, tight, restrained, sitting in her jaw like a held breath. Daniel leaned toward Nathan, his whisper sharp with panic. She's done. That's it. Fired on the spot. Shut up, someone else muttered under their breath. Emily's eyes drifted to the window, where the clouds stretched endlessly across the sky, glowing gold under the late morning sun. It should have been a peaceful view, but inside, the cabin was a pressure cooker ready to blow. 1 minute passed, then 2. Daniel leaned in again, his whisper more urgent this time. She's going to sue. Emily, the company. This whole flight could destroy everything. Nathan gave a small shake of his head. Stop. Just stop talking. But the panic spread like static. Quiet, erratic murmurs bubbling up under the surface. Would Emily fire Megan on landing? Would she press charges? Would this end up on the news? And then Megan spoke. Her voice was thin, barely audible. I shouldn't have done that. The words dropped like stones into water. Heavy. Inevitable. Everyone turned toward her, shocked she'd said anything at all. But then she lifted her head again, her gaze meeting Emily's. But I meant every word I said. The air snapped tight again. Emily's team looked around anxiously, shifting in their seats, trying to guess what came next. Daniel muttered under his breath, She's unhinged. Emily finally leaned forward again, her hands now calmly laced together in her lap. Her voice was controlled, almost too calm. Tell me something, she said, scanning the faces in front of her. All of you. They froze. When she said I was surrounded by people who don't respect me. Emily continued, her tone even. How many of you felt that was true? No one moved. No one answered. She tilted her head slightly. Silence, she said, tells me more than words ever could. Nathan's throat bobbed. He wanted to respond, but couldn't. Daniel looked down, adjusting his watch like it suddenly required his full attention. 2 others found sudden interest in their laptops, eyes darting from screen to floor. Megan's lips pressed tight. Even she hadn't expected Emily to turn the tables so cleanly, so swiftly. Emily leaned back once more, arms folding. A slap doesn't embarrass me, she said quietly. You know what does? Lies. Disloyalty. Cowards. She paused, letting that land. But the truth. Her voice softened just slightly. The truth only makes me stronger. The executives glanced at one another, nervous and unsure. They had seen Emily angry before, even ruthless. But this was different. She wasn't reacting. She was recalibrating. By 5 minutes in, the air inside the cabin had thickened with dread. Every hushed whisper died out before it finished forming. Megan stood frozen, hands clasped in front of her, face unreadable. Emily sat like a thunderstorm waiting for the right second to strike. By 7 minutes, Daniel finally cracked. Emily, wait. I've always been loyal, Daniel Brooks blurted out. Her head snapped toward him. Don't use the word loyal if you don't understand what it means. His mouth clamped shut, the rebuke slicing straight through him. 8 minutes. Then 9. The tension inside the cabin wasn't just palpable. It was crawling up their spines, coiling under their skin, making the air itself feel heavier. Then, exactly 10 minutes after Megan Lawson's slap, Emily Carter stood. Every head turned toward her. Heartbeats kicked into overdrive. No one breathed. She rose slowly, deliberately, her posture composed, almost regal. Her gaze swept across the cabin. Nathan, Daniel, the rest of them. cold, focused, assessing. And then, with a voice as clear and measured as glass, she said, "You're all finished." The words struck like a guillotine. Shock rippled through the group. Mouths fell open. Eyes widened. Nathan's voice cracked. "Wait, what?" "All of you," Emily repeated. "Each and every one of you. Fired. Effective immediately." Chaos erupted like a bomb. Voices overlapped in disbelief, protests spilling out like wildfire. "You can't fire everyone. Think about the shareholders, Emily. This is emotional. It won't hold. Emily, we're your team." The noise filled the cabin like smoke in a sealed room. Emily didn't move. She stood calmly in the center of the aisle, her spine straight, hands loosely clasped in front of her. Somehow, the jet felt like it tilted under the force of her authority. "Sit down," she said. Her tone carried the weight of finality. One command, no room for negotiation. The voices cut off. One by one, the executives slumped back into their seats, stunned and silent. Eyes darted to each other like children caught misbehaving. Nathan tried to regroup. "Emily, we've worked together for more than a decade. This can't be." She silenced him with a raised hand. "Nathan," she said, "I trusted you with the numbers. And you lied. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake wondering if we'd miss payroll because of your negligence?" Nathan turned pale. He tried to speak, but nothing came. Her eyes moved to Daniel. "And you?" she said coldly. "More obsessed with being heard than being useful. Do you think I don't know about your secret meetings? The ones where you called me an obstacle?" Daniel's mouth opened, but Emily's glare nailed him to his seat. "Obstacle," she repeated, the word laced with disgust. "You used that word. About me. In my own company. The same company I built from scratch, brick by brick, while you were still trying to land your first agency job." Daniel looked down, shame burning into his face. Emily turned her attention to the rest. Her voice stayed calm, but it carried like thunder. "And the rest of you? You sat in those rooms. You nodded. You whispered. You played both sides. You thought I didn't see it? I see everything. That's why I'm here." She paused. "And why you're all replaceable." The silence was brutal. No one moved. No one dared to speak. Megan stood at the front of the cabin, arms crossed now, her earlier defiance shifting into a stunned kind of awe. She'd expected a firing, maybe one or two executives, not an entire power structure torn down mid-flight. Nathan found his voice again, desperate now. "Emily, we can fix this. Whatever mistakes were made, we can repair the damage. Don't throw the company away over." He pointed toward Megan. Emily's head snapped toward him. "Don't you dare blame her." Her words cut like glass. "The slap was the spark," she said. "But the fire? That was already burning. Quietly. While you all assumed I was too distracted to notice. She didn't cause this. She just showed me it was time." Nathan fell silent. Crushed. Daniel leaned forward, anger bubbling up beneath his panic. "This is suicide. A company can't run without leadership. You're going to crash your own empire." Emily stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that could slice steel. "The only thing that could crash my empire is leaving it in the hands of people like you." Daniel sank back, speechless. Emily turned back to the group. Her tone sharpened, slicing clean through their last threads of hope. "You think you're irreplaceable? You're not." She paused. "I have managers across the country. Hungry, sharp, loyal people who remember what it means to fight for something instead of protecting their corner office and quarterly bonus. I'll build a new team before this jet lands." They looked at one another, finally grasping the truth. This wasn't impulsive. It was an execution. Megan finally spoke, her voice soft. "Why now?" Emily looked at her, holding her gaze for a long, quiet moment before answering. "Because power isn't about sitting at the top of a boardroom or collecting titles," she said. "Power is knowing when to cut dead weight. And I've been carrying all of you for far too long." The air went still. No more protests. No more whispers. Just the hum of engines and the quiet realization that Emily wasn't bluffing. She returned to her seat, unhurried. Calm. In control. She picked up a glass of water, sipped from it like nothing had happened. "Effective immediately," she said. "There is no executive team. I will rebuild from the ground up." Her voice stayed cool, but the warning that followed cut deep. "And if any one of you leaks a word of this before I make my announcement, you won't just be unemployed. You'll be blacklisted." Gasps rippled through the cabin, but no one challenged her. They knew better. They knew she wasn't bluffing. The jet soared high above the country, slicing through clouds and sky, but inside, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The hierarchy was gone. Titles meant nothing. Emily stood alone at the top again, just like she had when she first began. But this purge wasn't the final chapter. It was just the start. Above the Dallas skyline, a reckoning waited, and it was coming fast. No one moved. The executives sat frozen, laptops open but untouched, their gazes flicking anxiously around the cabin like caged animals sensing the trap had already sprung. Emily had pulled the rug out from beneath them, and there was no soft landing, no golden parachute. Finally, Daniel cracked the silence. "So what? You're just throwing us all away after everything we've given you?" Emily set her glass down gently, the sound of it landing against the wood table unnervingly soft. "Years don't equal loyalty, Daniel," she said coolly. "They just mean time passed. And time doesn't cancel betrayal." Nathan leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. "Emily, come on. We're not perfect, but neither are you. If you let all of us go, what does that say about your leadership?" She met his eyes without a blink. "It says my leadership is strong enough to admit when I've let the wrong people sit at my table, and stronger still to know when to send them away." From the far side of the cabin, Rachel Sutton finally spoke, her voice soft, shaking. "Emily, I've never lied to you. I've done my job. If we're all being treated the same, that's not fair." Emily turned to her, sharp. "Fair," she said. "This is business. Success isn't fair. You don't stand inside the walls of a company I built and ask for fairness. You deliver results, or you leave." Rachel sank back into her seat, hands tightening in her lap, the weight of Emily's words wrapping around her throat. Megan remained near the front of the cabin, aware of the sideways glances. She could feel it, the resentment, the blame. In their eyes, she was the one who'd lit the match. But they didn't know the truth. The slap? That was nothing. Emily had been holding back a storm for months, maybe years. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking with anger now. "You'll regret this. We're the ones who keep investors calm. We're the face of stability." Emily cut in, her voice like a knife sliding across a table. "You're the ones who almost sunk the brand, smiling to my face while stabbing the company from within." Her voice softened, but somehow, it was more dangerous that way. "You think I didn't know about the leak last quarter? The whispers about me being too demanding, too controlling, the supposed bottleneck?" The executives sat motionless. "Guilty. Exposed. I know exactly who started those rumors," she said. "And I know who repeated them. You thought I wouldn't find out? You forgot who I am." Nobody could meet her eyes. "Here's the truth," Emily said, her voice like flint. "I built this company without you. I can rebuild it again. And this time, I'll do it with people who haven't forgotten the fight it takes to climb." Silence gripped the cabin. Only the soft vibration of the engines reminded them they were still airborne. Megan finally took a step forward. Her voice was steady, neutral. "So what happens to them now?" Emily looked up. Her tone didn't rise. "They go home. They pack their things. And they disappear from my world." Those words hit harder than the slap ever had. This wasn't just about losing their jobs. They were losing their status, their careers, their identity, their power. Daniel muttered under his breath, bitter. "You're ruthless." Emily didn't even turn her head. Her gaze stayed forward, unshaken. "I'm alive," she replied. "There's a difference." And just like that, Daniel went silent. The jet began its slow descent. The Dallas skyline shimmered through the window, but no one looked. No one cared. Every eye stayed fixed on Emily, still seated like nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just torn the executive floor apart mid-flight. Nathan tried one final plea, his voice low, broken. Emily, please. Think about the message this sends. She turned to him, her expression unreadable, her eyes calm and cutting. That's the point, she said. I'm sending a message, and the world's going to hear it, loud and clear. But the message wasn't just for the few on board. It would echo in boardrooms. It would hit the press. It would blaze across headlines. And by the time they landed in Dallas, the turbulence inside the jet was about to become a public reckoning. The wheels hit the runway with a heavy thud. The cabin tilted forward. The executives flinched, like the landing had snapped them out of a trance, but they didn't speak. They couldn't. They knew. It was over. Emily sat tall, still buckled in, eyes fixed on the runway lights as they flashed past the window. She looked untouchable. An invisible wall now separated her from everyone else on board, and it wasn't going anywhere. When the jet finally rolled to a stop on the private side of Dallas Love Field, she unbuckled her belt and stood. Every motion was calm, intentional. She turned to face the team one last time. You thought you could hide things from me, she said, voice crisp. That you could erode my authority piece by piece while I wasn't watching. She paused. But here's what you forgot. I've spent my entire life being underestimated, Emily Carter said, her voice low but unwavering. And that's exactly why I'll always be one step ahead. No one responded. The executives sat frozen in their seats, not one of them daring to meet her eyes. She continued, slower now, every word deliberate, every syllable meant to linger. You were good once. Sharp. Useful. But somewhere along the way, you got comfortable. Too comfortable. You forgot that loyalty isn't optional. You forgot that respect, real respect, matters more than clever strategy. She let that sit. And today you paid the price. At the front of the cabin, Megan Lawson stood silently by the door, her hands clasped together, her expression a strange mix of reverence and awe. She still hadn't fully processed what had just happened. Emily's gaze softened as it met hers. As for you, she said, her voice steady, you crossed a line today. You should have never put your hands on me. She paused. But you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Power means nothing if you're too afraid to use it. She gave the faintest nod. And for that, I won't forget you. Megan lowered her head, just slightly. Not in shame. In acknowledgement. Then, the door opened. Sunlight poured into the cabin, casting long shadows across the floor. A rush of warm Texas air swept through the space, carrying with it something else, release. The pressure that had been building finally broke. Emily turned and walked down the steps first, her stride strong, her presence unshaken. Behind her, the former executives followed, silent, uncertain, the weight of their downfall heavier than any bag they carried. At the bottom, Emily paused. She looked out at the terminal, the city skyline rising in the distance. And just for a moment, she thought about the girl she used to be. The one who sold homemade products from a folding table on the sidewalk in Columbus. The one with nothing but grit and vision. Back then, all she had was hunger. Now, she had everything, except patience for people who couldn't rise with her. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly, a whisper meant only for herself. Better to fly alone, she said, than to crash with the wrong crew. That was the truth, the lesson. And it wasn't just meant for her executives, or for Megan, or for the jet that had become a Madeira courtroom. It was meant for anyone listening. Because here's the truth, loyalty matters. Respect matters. And if you want to rise, really rise, you have to stop dragging the people who keep pulling you down. So if you've ever felt stuck, ever felt underestimated, if you've ever known it was time to let go of people who don't see your worth, remember Emily Carter. Remember that it's okay to start over. It's okay to walk away, to cut ties, to rebuild. Because sometimes, the only way to reach higher is to burn down what's been holding you back. And if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Because someone else out there might need permission to fly higher, too. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.